Hello, everyone. Hope you are doing well. We have a text here. The text stated here, read the text and answer the question below. Well, this is a kind of a reading comprehension, a small text which is pointed here. On the basis of that, we have a question also followed to the passage. So, what the text states here, let's read this. So, it states that trade and investment ministers of the G20 nations, representing 80% of the world's economic output, three quarters of trade flows, and three-fifths of the population, concluded their deliberations under India's presidency of the bloc last week. So, uh, and a comprehensive communique was scuttled, separated as China and Russia blocked. So scuttled means called as separating. China and Russia blocked reference to geopolitical issues arising from the conflict in Ukraine, as has been the case since last year's G20 Bali summit. Yet, in the midst of flailing prospects for global trade and investment in the near term, the G20 nations did agree to take joint actions to reaffirm the world's faith in cross-border commerce and investment flows as a route to prosperity and growth for all. The government excuse me. The government counted five concrete and action oriented deliverables from the meet, including a dialogue on global standard to breach regulatory divergences across countries, and a compendium on best practices for mutual recognition of qualification for professional services such as medicine, law, and nursing. Well, we have just read the text, but what this text is all about, it's nothing but indicating about G20 nations. So if you talk about the text, the main idea of the passage is that what the trade and investment ministers of the G20 nations meeting under India's presidency concluded their discussion that what despite facing challenges such as the blocking of a comprehensive communique due to geopolitical issues related to the conflict in Ukraine, the G20 nations agreed to collaborative action. These actions are aimed at restoring confidence in cross-border uh, trade and investment as pathways to prosperity and growth. The passage also highlights the importance of the G20 group, representing a substantial portion of the global economy, trade, and population. And it also mentions what specific outcomes of the meeting, including efforts to address regulatory divergences through global standards, and you can say that the recognition of qualification for professional services. The examples which are pointed here, such as medicine, law, and nursing. Well, if you look into that, the passage discusses what? Now, discusses about G20 trade and investment, where India is nothing but leading under the India's presidency. So, and this addressed challenges to what this actually meeting is all about, what this summit is all about. Now, it it addresses the challenges to the global trade and business with China and Russia blocking. It also says that with China and Russia blocking a reference to Ukraine's conflict, but it also emphasizes joint action to restore faith in cross-border commerce despite the kind of a problem and investment for prosperity. So that is what is nothing but a group's significance or called as a importance. Okay. Now, on the basis of this particular main ideas and the kind of a discussion which we have done on the text, I hope you all have understood. Now, let's come to the question. What does the question say here? The question stated here, all of the following statement, if false. All of the following statements, if false, possibly be seen as being in accordance with the passage, right? Or you can say that on the basis of the passage, if you find out all the options are false, right? Except, it means one of the option shall be considered as not false. So we can get the idea that what the question is trying to tell us. The question tries to make us realize that if all the options are false, would not align with the information presented in the passage. So one of the option will be there, which is nothing but considering as the except. In other words, you can say you need to find the statement that comes out from the passage, and that the correct answer would be the statement that goes with the context or content of the passage, while the other statements would not be consistent with the information of the passage. Isn't it? That is what all of the following statement, if false. So possibly be seen as nothing but a taken from the passage, except one which is considering as a means part of the text or part of the passage. You can say that all the options will be taken from the passage will be considered false. Only one option which is taken from the passage will be considering as the answer to it. Right. Now, moving to the choices here. So what are the choices presented here? The choices, the first choice is indicating the first choice. So the first choice says that, let's see that what the first choice would be. Yeah. The first choice say, China and Russia supported the reference to geopolitical issues. China and Russia supported the reference to geopolitical issues arising from the conflict in Ukraine. Look into it. The main thought is pointed. This is taken from the text itself, because you could find out that in the text it is given about China and Russia. But what it has pointed? It is pointed a comprehensive communique was separated as China and Russia blocked a reference to geopolitical issues arising from the conflict in Ukraine. So this makes us realize, though the text is, or though the answer is taken from the text, but it is indicated that it is a false information. China and Russia doesn't support. The passage clearly states that China and Russia blocked the reference, right? Blocked the reference to geopolitical issues related to the conflict in Ukraine. So on the basis of that, we cannot consider this will be the means answer option, because this fails to understand the idea of the text, right? So in that case, this will be proved wrong, right? So coming to the second one, what the second text says here, or what the second choice points out here, the G20 nations decided to abandon efforts to strengthen cross-border commerce and investment. So what does it say? The G20 nations decided to abandon efforts to strengthen cross-border commerce and investment. Now, when you talk about abandon means called as a discontinue. The G20 nations decided to discontinue. Look into the text, whether the text is stated the same or not. Well, if you see that Trade and Investment Minister of G20 nation, representing 80% of the world's economic output, 3/4 of trade flows, and 3/5 of the population, concluded that deliberation under India's presidency of the block last week. A comprehensive committee was so and so block the okay. So as has been the case since last year G20 Bali summit, but amid flailing, or it could be flailing prospects for global trade and investment in the near term, the G20 nations did agree to take joint actions to reaffirm the world's faith in cross-border commerce. So it means it is clearly indicating the G20 nations did agree to take joint action to assure or reassure the world's faith in cross-border commerce and investment, and flows a route to prosperity and growth for all. So on the basis of that, we can consider the G20 nations decided to do what? Decided to or agreed to take joint actions to reaffirm faith in cross-border commerce and investment flows. This does not talk that it discontinues efforts to strengthen cross-border commerce. It agreed to, right? So therefore, we consider this text is false, though it is taken from the text, or this choice is false, though it is taken from the text, but it does not means support to the text, right? It doesn't align with the text. So therefore, this could be called as a means incorrect answer on the basis of the question. Now moving to the option C, what does option C say? The G20 meeting in Bali resulted in a comprehensive communique. Now, obviously, we have heard and read also about G20 meeting in Bali that occurred somehow, I think, in the last year. It is stated, yes, here you would find out. What does it say? Means as has been the case since last year G20 Bali summer. So you can see that the G20 meeting in Bali resulted in a what? You could say blocked reference geopolitical issues arising from the conflict in Ukraine, as has been the case since last year G20 Bali summit. As has been the case since last year G20 Bali summit means it is taken as the example, means whatever happened because of the Ukraine or China and Russia. The same also occurs in a Bali summit. A comprehensive committee was separated as China and Russia blocked the reference to geopolitical issues arising from the conflict in Ukraine, as has been the case since last year's G20 Bali summit. So this could prove that that what the G20 meeting in Bali resulted in a comprehensive communique. So we consider that the passage indicates that a comprehensive communique was scuttled or blocked, possibly referring to the fact that it could not be agreed upon due to the issue involving China, Russia, and Ukraine, isn't it? So, but if we observe that, a kind of understanding, right? So, if you say that where the Bali, the G20 meeting in Bali resulted in a comprehensive communique, so this makes the sense that this would be a kind of a means agreed to the answer, but at the same time it is taken as the example. Separated at China and Russia, blocked a reference to geopolitical issues arising from the conflict in Ukraine, because the comprehensive communique has been the case since last year's G20 Bali summit, right? Now, if we talk about that, this would be possibly referring to the fact that it could not be agreed upon due to the issue involving China, Russia, and the Ukraine, right? Okay, coming to, but we consider that option C is somehow related to the text, as the question is stated, which if false could be seen as being in accordance with the passage. So it is taken from the text, but at the same time, this would be considering as an example, which is our comparison. Okay, moving to the option D, maybe we find out the option which will be considered the most appropriate. Option D is stated G20 trade ministers led by India tackled to trade challenges despite Ukraine-related geopolitical issues, focusing on restoring faith in cross-border commerce. Well, uh, this would be the most appropriate choice as far as the text concerned, because if you talk about that, the option D points out about what? Now, the main idea of the text, isn't it? So, because the passage discusses how G20 trade and investment ministers meeting under India's presidency addressed challenges, tackled trade challenges. So, to global trade, as well as you can say that what tackle trade challenges despite Ukraine-related geopolitical issues. So, geopolitical issues means that you can find out with China and Russia blocking a reference to Ukraine's conflict, but emphasizing joint action to restoring faith in cross-border commerce and investment for the for prosperity, showcasing the group's significance, isn't it? That is what it's given here. Yep. So you can see that this president blocked last week. Comprehensive communique was a scuttle at China and so and so. But amid failing prospects for global trade investment in the near term, the G20 nations did agree to take joint action to reaffirm the world's faith in cross-border commerce and investment flow as a route to prosperity and growth for all. So, therefore, we could consider option D is nothing but the main idea of the text, and this would be considered as the most appropriate answer choice to this particular question, right? If you think about uh, option C, this could be considering as a kind of an answer which is taken from the text but not considered as the means main idea or the most appropriate idea to the question which is asked here, right? So therefore, if you look into that uh, option which could be seen as being in accordance with the passage, that will be referring to the uh, option choice, which is pointed here as option D. Option C would be called as a kind of a example or a kind of a comparison on a particular issue which is stated, right? So therefore, the answer will be option D. Hope you understood. Thank you.